So, okay, there's something popping up. This meeting is being live streamed. Okay, okay, all right. Something popped up on the screen. So again, again, this is what the current exhibition is. Um, and so the way that the Genesis Museum functions is, and what I'll do is I'll use a scenario of another museum, say the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, what they do is they present the culture, the history, and the science of a civilization or a group of people to explain the art of that culture or civilization. So it's called the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Genesis Museum is Genesis Museum of International Black Culture. And what we do is we use art, history, and science to expose and teach the culture of African Americans, Africans, Black people from around the world, wherever they be, whether they be in the Caribbean, whether they be on the motherland, Africa, whether they be in the Americas, the United States, Europe, Japan, Asia, China, wherever Black people went, we tried to document that history and show the cultural impact that our people had on those societies and civilizations. So I know that's a mouthful, but basically that's what we do, and that's what makes us different than other institutions. Yes, we have the great Schomburg Library, but that's a research library. We have Studio Museum of Harlem, but that's an art museum. We have the dance theater, that's dance. We have the Apollo Theater, that's entertainment. We need to have in our great Harlem a museum that promotes, documents, and celebrates the richness of Black culture. Harlem is the Black capital of the world, and so we definitely need to have this museum here. Our ultimate goal is we would like to have the city allow us to develop Mart 125 at 260 West 125th Street, across the street from the Apollo Theater in the village of Harlem in New York City, so that our students, our children, our kids can have a place where they can come and experience greatness, where they can experience the greatness that their ancestors have done, and learn about their history and culture, because they're not getting it in school. And because they don't get that, teaching, they're devoid of the rich culture that they are a part of, that their ancestors are. So we must get a place here in Harlem that we can build a major international museum where we can have international exhibitions from Ghana, from Nigeria, from Jamaica, from Brazil. Again, this is what our goal is. This is what we're working towards.
So what is the connection with Egypt and your museum and the museum?
So we wanted to start our first, what we were going to do was we were going to document or exhibit 6 of the great African civilizations in Africa, ancient civilizations in Africa. We decided to start with the greatest of all the great African civilizations, ancient Egypt, or Kemet, as it was called, by the people of Africa. We wanted to show that this was a Black African civilization and culture. Just just the same as West Africa culture and civilizations. We wanted to show that because of the distortion that has been promoted by the other side, that Egypt was somehow either Middle East or Mediterranean or European, anything but the great African. And honestly, they taught that because they couldn't justify enslaving African people at the same time, understanding that their culture and civilization came from these Black Africans. So, and it was a little difficult to promote white supremacy at the same time you're saying that the Black people were inferior. And so what we see is that, this stolen legacy, that's what it was. They stole our legacy, claiming that they created this high civilization, that they built the pyramids, that they created the writings, and this great spiritual culture that existed for over 10,000 years. Again, Egyptology only starts with the first pharaoh, but we know from our research and study that the civilization began much later than 5,000 years ago. And so that's what we wanted to show, that's what we wanted to document, and that's what we wanted to expose our people, and especially our children, to the fact that, yes, Black people are capable of greatness. Again, one of the arguments that ancient Kemet Egypt was not a Black culture was because it was believed that Black people were incapable of creating such a civilization. So that's why you get these strange stories that, the pyramid was built by aliens coming from outer space, or from the lost city of Atlantis, or some story like that, because they could not justify saying that Black Africans, Black people, were capable of creating such a high civilization. So that's what this exhibit is about, and that's what we do here at Genesis Museum.
So what is Egyptology?
Egyptology was created in around the 18th century, AD, after the Common Era, and so it was established by the Pope, and it was to teach a science of ancient Egypt, and promote ancient Egypt as not as an African civilization. So, and then what they did was they started teaching, that there was sub-Sahara Africa, meaning that below the Sahara, that's where Black people were. But north of the Sahara, and in Egypt especially, those people were not Black Africans. So Egyptology was this science, quote, science of Egypt. And they promoted, they taught about, studied and taught about ancient Egypt. Archaeological digs into the Valley of the Kings, around the pyramids and such like that, and to study the culture there, and to promote a science called Egyptology. Now, all you have to do is realize that there are no Europeantology or Asiantology or there's not even Africantology. There's only Egyptian ethology. So again, we have to really question it. But the science was very flawed. The science was very flawed because they did not understand the African culture that existed in Kemet. They did not understand it. They were able to document some of the historical aspects of it, like the dynasties, the pharaohs, who was pharaohs and that sort of thing, but they were not able to understand the culture. And because they couldn't understand the culture, that science was really flawed. It was just limited to historical facts and science in terms of archaeological studies and understanding the mummification, if you will. And again, a lot of this language that we use is Greek translation of the Egyptian language and things. So like Egypt, the word Egypt, the name Egypt is the Greek translation for Kemet. And and the same thing with all of the, how we say about we speak about ancient Egypt, we use the Greek terminology of it, because the Greeks went into ancient Egypt and they were amazed at how advanced a civilization it was. And so they Socrates and Hippocrates and all of the quote famous Greek philosophers and thinkers all went to school in ancient Kemet, all went to school in the temples in Egypt. And that's where they learned science, math, philosophy, religion, astrology, astronomy, all of that. That's where they went to school in Egypt. And then they brought it back to Greece. And the Greek people thought that, hey, you created this. So we're told that Pythagoras, mathematics, but yet Pythagoras spent 22 years in Egypt, in the temples in Egypt, where that's where you went to learn all of the sciences and all the philosophy and high way of thinking. So again, Egyptology was the study of ancient Egypt, but only from a historical and, if you will, a scientific aspect of it, because they didn't know the culture. They didn't understand the culture. So like one of the things that we see is that the gods and goddesses, as the Europeans called them, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and again, those are all Greek names, and those are all translations of the original Egyptian, the Kemetic language. So I'm using that now because that's what everyone is familiar with. But they didn't understand what these gods and goddesses represented and what their purpose was. So they used a European paradigm to understand, or to try to understand, the Egyptian belief system, the belief system. So they didn't understand that they didn't believe in 1,000 different gods. All those gods, quote, and I use quotes, gods, because that's not what they were. They Neterus and Neterits. They were forces of nature. So Ra, the sun, forces of nature. Happy, the Nile River. These were all forces of nature. And so the Egyptians observed their environment, and they knew what these forces of nature was, and they used these images and ideas and names in order for them to pass this way of understanding your environment on to the masses of Egyptian people. So it was a way
So
to
Tommy,
yes, go ahead.
so tell me, how did you learn about Egyptology, and how did you become so knowledgeable about it? Did you discover it?
Okay, so when back in the 1980s, I worked for the Brooklyn Museum. At the Brooklyn Museum, there was a young Black Egyptologist. His name was Jules Easton Taylor. And they kept him locked up, not locked up, but they kept him hidden away. But we managed to meet him, and he exposed us to Egypt and ancient Egypt. And he was in the same way of thinking as Cheikh Diop. In other words, his whole thesis and his way of understanding and teaching about ancient Egypt was to show that Egypt was a Black African civilization. And the brother caught pure hell from the white Egyptologists who insisted that, listen, Black people were incapable of doing that. They couldn't have done that. But he was determined, and he exposed us to it. He opened our eyes to what the truth about ancient Kemet. And after that, I did take a trip to Egypt. I did see all the sites there in Egypt, and went on the studies of the temples and the pyramids and the Sphinx and the Nile River and all of that, and that exposed me even more to this culture. Then on top of all of that is my studies. I'm not an Egyptologist. I didn't go to school for this, but I did study just about every book I can find on ancient Egypt, from Diop to Mfudishi, Jehuti Mas, and so from my research and study, this is where I came to learn about this great, fantastic civilization.
Now, your partner that you work with, tell me about your partner who's 95 years young, who's a partner with you on this project.
Mr. Andy Owens. Mr. Andy Owens, I met him also at the Brooklyn Museum back in the 80s, early 80s. And he also worked there with us. And again, he was exposed to Egyptian culture also. But Mr. Owens he was on a different type of mission at the time. He, as he said to me back then, he said, "Donald, do you know that there are no museums on Black culture?" And so, we were working in a museum, but I had never thought about that. I was not exposed to it and was never thought about it. And he said that he wanted to create a Black museum, a Black history and cultural museum. And so I was, it just seemed like I was just waiting to hear that. And so, I joined him, and we've been trying to create this ever since. Also back in the 80s, we were allowed by Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Smalls to come onto the campus of City College. And they gave us a space inside the student lounge in City College. And for 2 to 3 years, we were able to present exhibits. About 3 years.
How many years?
3 years, 2 to 3 years. Yes, we were able to present exhibits on our Black culture that the students were able to come in and see and learn, Also, we would bring in school groups and community summer youth programs. But again, and Dr. Jeffries, he also was under tremendous pressure with his Black Studies department, and they weren't. The college was not happy about us being there, but they really couldn't do anything because we were in the student part of the campus. So if we had been in the regular part of the campus, they might have thrown us out or not let us come in. But we were in the student side, and they eventually they started accepting us. So, but in the end, what they managed to do was tear down the student lounge and stuff, and and once they went to build their new building, the NAC building there, we had to leave. And so again, then we were like nomads, moving all around. So I just want to say that we don't just do exhibitions, we also collect exhibitions. So the Genesis Museum, again, we've been around for over 50 years. So we've collected a tremendous amount of cultural artwork, information panels, exhibitions, art, documentation. In the late 80s, we were able to purchase a set of photographs from Malcolm X's personal photographer. And we purchased the photographs from him and we put it together. And so we have one of the only photographic exhibitions taken by his personal photographer, of Malcolm X. One of the ways that that is very different is that they show some of the photographs of him at Savior's Day, or his street corner orientations, but a majority of the images are Malcolm with his family, with his daughters. And, when you see these photographs, you see a whole different side of Malcolm. And that was the, El Haj Malik Shabazz. And that's what makes this exhibition special. And then we have another exhibit called, that was created by the Smithsonian Institution that documented the history of Africans during the American Revolution. And this is an extensive exhibit. The Smithsonian, after they traveled it around, we asked for it. We said that, we're a Black museum, we should have this exhibit. And they agreed and they gave it to us. So we have this exhibit. And so we, again, from time to time, we do show it. And then we also collected a large collection of West African sculptures and objects. So we have an extensive collection. So but we've had to move around. And now we finally have a permanent home here at 504 West 126th Street. But again, this is just the start of the museum's development. Again, we want 260 West 125th Street. If any of your audience knows that building, Mart 125, they know that it's been engulfed in politics for the last 25 years, and it still sits abandoned to this day, almost as an eyesore. And yet the city and the state will not have not been able to come up with a plan to do something with it. And it's been, again, fought in politics. The Community Board 10 is the community board that it's under. And again, but I think the city is the owner of the building or the state. And so the politics is very heavy. So again, if anyone knows the history of the Mart 125, they know that at one time that was the home of the vendors that you see on 125th Street. That was the vendors' home there, and they were given that space because the city wanted to get the merchants on 125th Street complained that the vendors were out there not having to pay rent and stealing their customers because they were taking it from them. So the city set up this Mart 125 and allowed some of the vendors to move in. Then after about a year or two, the city came back to the vendors and said, well, you know what? We want to renovate the space for y'all so that you can have an upgraded space. So, we want y'all to leave for now. We're going to renovate it. Then y'all can move back in. And I repeat that again. That was 25 years ago.
Wow.
And the reason why is because the city doesn't really want to give that back to us, the community. But at the same time, they can't stick another Victoria's Secrets in there because the community would be outraged. So it's in that kind of political tangle. For us, we say great because y'all were just holding it for us. Y'all were just keeping it for us. Y'all were just keeping the seat warm for us. Because think about it. This type of museum is built for that space. It would cement Harlem as the cultural capital of Black Africa or Black people.
So yes,
go ahead.
So let me ask you a question. So I have introduced the museum when I started telling people about it. I said, hey, guess what? There's an Egyptian museum in Harlem. Now, did I introduce it correctly or?
Yeah. Well, you introduced that there's a museum. We're not an Egyptian museum. The Egyptian exhibit is just one exhibit. But Genesis 2 Museum is a Black cultural museum.
Okay.
So we promote the culture of Black people, and we teach and expose our people and anyone else who wants to know the culture of Black people. So again, let's take the United States. What's the culture of Black people in the United States? The culture of Black people in the United States is we've created the music, we create the fashion, we create and I can go on. And, and again, this comes out of our culture, our spiritual culture, our religious culture, our sense of colors and sense of rhythms and music. This is all African culture. And so this is what we document. This is what we expose our kids to. This is what we teach. So it just so happens that our first exhibit is on ancient Egypt because we believe in Sankofa. We believe that we have to go back and reclaim our tradition and our culture in order to move forward. I don't know if people know Mfudishi. He is the Egyptian priest who worked on 125th Street. He has a school, so we were fortunate enough to bring him here, and he is part of our organization now. He holds classes and lectures and such here. In October, we are going to have a series of lectures here from Dr. Jeffries, Professor Smalls, Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, and others, scholars on not just Kemet, but on Africa, on the African culture. And these lectures are open to the public. We invite everyone to come in to experience them, also to experience the space here, but also, you know, if you have questions or you want to discuss certain things about our culture and history, they will, you know, open up for us to understand our history and culture. So it's a learning experience. And again, you know, we'll be doing this in October. And again, if you go to the genesismuseum.org website, you could submit your email, and you will be notified of activities, of upcoming events, and also you could have the opportunity to become members, and you will get our schedules for openings and tours. So that's what we're doing.
So let me ask you, how someone say, let's say I'm speaking to someone, I'm telling someone about this, and they say to me, you know, I'm not interested because I'm struggling. I'm just trying to get my bills paid. I'm trying to make a living. I'm trying to take care of my family. How is this information going to help me? That's one. Two, how's it going to help the guy that's interested? Only thing he wants to know about is hip hop this and hip hop that. That's one. And then the other one is the guy that's standing on the corner. How is this information going to help the guy that's standing on the corner? The guy that's the people that's only interested in hip hop, or the family that's struggling, just trying to pay their bills?
Okay, very good question. We believe that culture is our medicine, and we believe, and so we believe that yes, culture is our medicine, and we believe that we Black folks, especially here in America, suffer because our mindset is a different culture. It's not our true African culture. And so this is why you know, our kids will stand. They will come outside 6 o'clock in the morning, freezing cold, stand online, waiting for the shoe store to open up to purchase a $200, $300 pair of sneakers that maybe they'll only wear once. Some of them are a little entrepreneurial. They'll resell them, but the point is, that's what their mindset is. That's what their culture. That's the culture that they believe that they are. That, you know, this sneaker is you know, high culture or fashion, whatever. We believe that once, and again, every day we turn on the news and we hear that our brothers, you know, we're killing each other, you know, for trivial stuff. We're just slaughtering each other. Mfudishi teaches us that we're mentally, we're sick mentally, because we got away from what our culture was. So a way to understand it is that when the enslavers brought us here, the first thing they did was perform genocide on our culture. What does that mean? That means they took away our language, they took away our religion, they took away our family ties, they took away our cultural traditions, they stripped us of everything that made us African people, and then replaced it with the slave mentality. And this slave mentality, we're still suffering to this day. We're still under this slave mentality. And yet, so what we believe here at Genesis Museum is that once our people start to learn their true history and culture, that then that will start to cure them, that will start to bring them back. So the brother that's, has to go to work and just struggling, and that's all he cares about. But I'm sure he cares about his kids. He doesn't want his kids to go out there and get shot or to get involved in gangs or something like that. The young kid standing on the corner, he thinks that's his only out, that his only avenue. His education is limited, and he thinks that this is the only way. The capitalistic notion that this is what you have to do in order to succeed. So the culture teaches our kids, go to school, get a good education so you could get a good job. It doesn't teach us, go to school and create jobs. Or so in the news, just quickly on this, in the news yesterday, the news announced that LeBron James will be paid $100 million for 2 years to play basketball. $100 million. And our first thought is, man, this man is rich, he's successful. But as Chris Rock said, no, I don't want to be the one that get paid $100 million. I want to be the one who pays him the $100 million. So that's where we want to get to. But we have to understand that again, it's a mentality, and until we get our culture to heal us, where we get back to being a look out for ourselves, look out for each other. That's when we could start to heal. But it takes knowledge. Knowledge is power, and it takes knowledge to get there.
Okay, so speaking of knowledge, one of the things that I did, I got involved with this thing called positive motivation, personal development, personal growth, success principles. And, we talked about Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, where they went and studied. How does that come into play with Black culture? The positive motivational success principles. How does that come into play in the Black culture?
Because if we don't understand our culture, then we will all the success in that, we won't help our people. We won't be able to help each other because we're limited to thinking that that's what we have to do. That we're limited. So yes, LeBron understands his culture. That's why he uses some of his money to create his own schools, public schools. Again, we need to do that. So again, it's not so much that, so we go to colleges and universities and we get degrees and PhDs, but how come it doesn't help our community? Because what we learn is to work for them, or to work for that for them, and it doesn't come back to us. We don't have the doctors and lawyers and such in our community helping our community. So that's where culture comes in. Once the culture comes in, then we start to understand that whatever we learn in universities, we have to remember though also that what we learn in colleges and universities is not designed to help us to overcome, to help us create our communities, develop our communities. What we learn is to help the capitalist society, to make it more. So again, we have to do. So now there was a new announcement that all of a sudden now young Black brothers and sisters graduating from high school, even though they have the credentials to go to some of the top white colleges, are choosing to go to the black colleges, the HBFCs. So that's a tremendous. And what's the reason for that? Because our young people are starting to realize that those Yale and Harvard and all of that does not promote their culture. They understand that their culture is not promoted, that somebody else's culture is promoted in those universities. So now they want to go to a Black university where their culture is being promoted, and that's what we need to get to more. Look, it's going to come to there's going to come a time when we're going to have to stop sending our kids to their schools. We need to create our own schools, and because we've been sending our kids to their schools all this time, and it hasn't really helped us. You know, we see our kids out, like you said, standing on the corner. You ask any of them, and they'll tell you they probably stopped learning in the 3rd grade, but they had to hang around till they at least got to high school before they could not go to school because the law says you got to go to school. So but they stopped learning a long time ago.
So let me ask you this question. It's a 2-part question. One is, when I say this statement, I want to know what comes to mind. What comes to mind when you hear the statement? I'm looking at you now. I'm saying to you that there's greatness within you, right? That's the statement. And then the part 2 to that question is, how does that fit into everything that you're talking about, into the Black culture?
Again, and thank you for that. I'm humbled to say that I had to learn. Yes, there it is. There is greatness in you, absolutely. But we have to start being conscious of that. It has to come up from inner us. It has to come from our inner self. Again, when you, and it's too long to go through in here. When you study the ancient Kemetic people, you start to see how by their inner awareness, they were able to realize their greatness. They didn't have to say they were great. But just look at their works. Look at the pyramid. They still can't figure out how those people built it. Look at look at the fact that civilization lasted maybe 10,000 years. But even if you go with the Egyptological calendar and say that it only lasted or it started 5,000 years ago, and it's only 5,000 years ago, that's still longer than any civilization since. There's been no, and the American civilization, this thing is about just about over, and because we don't have the principles of ma'at. And that is the key to how do we bring forth our greatness. When you understand the principles of ma'at, you understand how to bring forth your greatness, because it exposes you and teach you to live righteously. And once we start to understand how to live righteously, then that's when the greatness comes up, because the greatness is in us. It's there. We have it. We just have to bring it forth. But it comes from inside of us. It's in us, but we have to bring it forth. Again, I talk about our schools, our current schools. Our current schools do not teach ma'at, so our kids don't know how to bring forth their greatness. In fact, expectations are low for our kids. We go into special eds more than any others. The funny thing, so for example, quick example, they have schools like Bronx High School of Science, Stuyvesant, these high schools. These are New York City public high schools. Yet those schools, because those are the very best of the high schools of the public school system, we're not in them. It's mostly whites and now Asians, but we're not in it. Why? Why we're not in them? Because the what's needed in developing us to be able to perform and bring out our greatness is stifled. It's stifled early on. It's stifled by the education we receive. It's stifled by the culture that we live in. You know, McDonald's and you know, the foods that we eat. All of this stunts our growth. And so again, this is why we say our culture is our medicine, because once we start to understand, learn, and appreciate our culture, we start to heal. And when we start to heal, our greatness comes out. And it comes out in us, it comes out in our kids, and that's it. And you know, then listen, the other side is worried that we are starting to wake up. They're starting to worry that we're starting to wake up, and they're afraid that once we wake up, we will no longer, you know, fall under their spell. I just give you a quick example of why the mentality, how our mentality works. Everyone remembers the bus boycott in Atlanta, and you know, back in the civil rights day. So what was the bus boycott? That city refused to let Black people sit anywhere they wanted in the bus, but mostly in the front, and they had to sit in the back. And so it came a time when Black folks said, you know what? If you're not going to let us sit where we want to, if we want to sit in the front, and Rosa Parks got arrested trying to sit in the front, we're not going to ride the bus anymore. So, and they did a bus boycott. The bus boycott was so successful. Why was it successful? Because Black folks was the ones who supported the bus company. And without Black folks riding the bus company was went out of business, was going to go out of business. So what does white folks say? White folks say, okay, you know what? You can sit anywhere you want. If you want to sit in the front, come on, sit in the front. And we celebrated that as a victory. Again, because of the culture the way our mentality was working. We didn't think that, hey, if we are the ones that make this bus company run, this white bus company work, why can't we have our own bus company? We don't need to go back to them. We make our own bus company and we'll be prosperous. And you know, so that would, but again, our mentality was, oh, we've overcome. You know, we defeated them. They allowed us to. So instead of opening up our own Woolworths, we boycotted their Woolworths, and it was spit on. And if we did get served some food, God only knows what was in it. Until they finally said, okay, you know, that's discrimination, and we can't discriminate against you anymore. Instead of us saying, you know what, let's open up our own Woolworth, and then we don't have to take that abuse. And then not only that, so and again, we see examples. Black Wall Street. What was Black Wall Street? It was Black folks doing for self, doing the whole community of self, their own stores, their own businesses, their own doctors, their own lawyers, all of that. And what did white folks say? No, you can't do that because you're too successful. We sitting here poor, and you sitting there prosperous. You sitting there making up the American dream, and we're sitting here poor, and not getting the American dream. So what are we going to do? We're going to destroy your town. We're going to destroy your town, kill your people, and the government, no one was ever arrested for that. Government didn't do anything. But again, and we know that the Black Wall Street was just one community of that such, that there were hundreds of other communities around the country that suffered the same fate. Florida, all over the country, anywhere where Black folk created their own, did for self, that was it. They were destroyed. Marcus Garvey said, "Do for self," and what happened? They came after him full force. And
who said that?
Marcus Garvey.
Who said "do for self"? Right.
Marcus Garvey.
Right.
Marcus Garvey. And that was his whole thrust, was do for self. And again, as long as we don't realize that we need to do for self, we'll always continue to be at the bottom of the economic, social, and educational ladder in this country.
Mm-hmm. So this is a final question, and let me get the website address and everything, and then we're gonna get to the final question.
Okay. Again, so the address of where we're located right now is 504 West 126th Street. That's right off of Amsterdam Avenue, between Amsterdam and Old Broadway. Our website is genesismuseum.org. GENESIS museum, MUSEUM.org.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Final question. Do you believe that this is a divine assignment that you are on? And why?
Absolutely. 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 Because,
and why?
Because all the forces, all our ancestors and everything have been assisting me in making this happen. Again, this space where we're in, it was an office space and a community room originally. And when we decided to create this as a museum space, we didn't have no money. We had no money. Someone who I knew was a contractor. I asked him, I said, listen, I want you to come to the space, assess what it would take to renovate it. And this is how I want it, what it's going to take to renovate it, and give me a cost of what it's going to cost to renovate it. And I will, then I will raise the money. And once I raise the money, then we'll hire you to do the job. He said, okay. He went, he looked at the space, and about a week later, he came back to me and he said, Donald, you know what? And he has a contracting company, full staff and everything. He says, here's what I'll do, Donald. I will renovate the space for you. I will purchase all the supplies that's needed. I will have my crew work every day, full time, to get it done. And when you're able to raise the money, you can pay me. And right then and there, I realized that it was beyond me, that the forces were there to, make this happen, that it was going to happen, and divine intervention. And again, everything has been going in that way. The final part was Mfudishi, meeting him and him coming here. Once that connection was done, that really demonstrated the divine intervention that was going to make this happen. I can give you a lot more examples, but those are the big ones. This exhibition, when I started it, I did not know that this is what I was going to do with this exhibition. I just started it, but somehow forces were guiding me in the way to make this happen. Uh, um, Everything that you see in this space, I've paid for out of my own pocket. I paid for out of my own pocket. All the work that you've seen that went into making this space the way it is, pretty much I did it on my own. And I'm not saying that to say, I'm saying that to say I was only able to do it because of the divine intervention. It was guiding me all this time. No, don't worry that you don't have the money to renovate it. Don't worry that you're taking your paycheck to buy all the stuff to do this. Don't worry that you don't have a staff to help you put this thing together. Mr. Owens is great. He helps me all the time. But again, we have to remember he's 95 years old. Have to remember
Whoa,
how
95
much.
years young. 95
I'm sorry,
years
my
young.
brother. You did explain that to me before. You did straighten me out on that. 95 years young. And you could attest to it. He is, for a 95-year young man person, he's very, very, very much, listen, I
Yeah.
want to be 95 like that. He's very, have all his awareness and energy. He comes every day. But physically, again, is limited to how much he can help me, but that's okay. Whatever it is, he makes it happen. So, and then he guides me on the exhibition and the museum and such like that, because he's been doing this, for so long. So yes, divine intervention is absolutely what's here. And again, I fully believe that the divine intervention is going to put us in that space at 260 West 125th Street, Mart 125. I do believe that with all my heart.
I actually have one other question. This is definitely the last
Yes.
question.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the term? Have you ever heard of the term social entrepreneurship?
Social entrepreneurship? No, I have not.
Okay, all right, we got to do some research on that. But I think that's a powerful entity, social entrepreneurship.
Okay.
It's dealing with entrepreneurship, having a business, but also looking to help a certain segment, whatever that segment might be. So, something to take a look at.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you, brother, and thank your family for listening to me and giving me this opportunity to present the museum. Again, everyone is invited. 504 West 126th Street. Website is genesismuseum.org. You're all welcome to come.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Signing off. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. All right.
Talk to you. Thank you.
All right. This is Rick signing off with another segment of What's in Your Hand on GHCR.NYC. I want to thank my engineer, Doug Fraser, did a great job putting this together. And we will continue to bring you more great information. And hopefully we can learn a little something and be a little bit smarter, as Mr. Doug Fraser would say. Right? Talk to you soon, and continue success and blessings.
furnish me with